Hi everybody, I'm Megan Gleason.
And I'm Dan Boyd.
Welcome to another episode of Rounding Up the Roundhouse.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
So we've got 4 days left.
Yeah, it's getting to that point where I'm running on Girl Scout cookies and caffeine and lots of long days at the Roundhouse. The Senate was in session last night until after 11 o'clock at night. They approved a lobbyist disclosure bill, also passed a bill dealing with New Mexico's red flag gun law. That bill is now going to the governor's office. She's expected to sign it, and it would kind of change how ththese petitions are filed for temporary firearm seizures, and it would allow law enforcement specifically to kind of initiate that process instead of waiting for an outside reporting party, an employer, a spouse, a parent, someone like that to approach them. So things are moving. A lot of bills, though, are still in committee as well. Some people are starting to getting a little worried about the fate of their bills, but we have seen a lot happen over the last few days.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of key bills get tied up in committees like Senate Finance and Senate Judiciary. We're still waiting on the budget to come out of Senate Finance, and it's getting time that we're going to need to see that moving soon.
Yeah, and we saw some kind of decisive action on a few bills. You were here on Saturday and covered a bill doing with paid leave that's gotten a lot of attention at the Roundhouse. And in an interesting twist, last year, it passed the Senate and died on the House floor. This year, the bill is different, as we've talked about in past podcasts, but it passed the House and ended up, not passing out of a Senate committee. So what can you tell folks about that?
Yeah, it was an interesting debate. It was about 2 hours in the Senate Finance Committee, and people weren't super hopeful going in. You've got more moderate Democrats on that committee, and I think something really of note there was that Senator Stewart, who was one of the Senate sponsors on the bill, was not actually present in committee, and she said later, when I asked her about the bill, that, the changes made were just too much, and it wasn't the bill that the Senate had originally passed in past years as a paid family medical leave act. It had these baby rebates now. There was a lot of questions about where is that money going to come from. It was a very different bill, but I did talk to the House sponsors. Representative Chandler said, we did what we had to do to get it through the House. Representative Serrato said something similar, and now it's kind of, can we find a sweet spot next year to get this bill through? It does sound like it'll be introduced again next year. They said hopefully it would be on the governor's call, but yeah, it was a big defeat for some people and a big win for others.
And kind of a reminder at the Roundhouse that just when you think sometimes that something has got a clear path to approval, things can change. I mean, like you said, the Senate not liking the House changes to the bill, and even some of the advocates kind of backing away a little bit. So I think that's what makes it interesting here is you never can kind of make assumptions, and things can change from year to year. And certainly we have a lot of new legislators as well. We've talked about that also. One of our colleagues did a story on some of the impact that they're having, but it does seem like on some of these bills, that we're seeing different kind of coalitions, different voting patterns. Another bill that I've been writing about a state-run program for psilocybin for people with certain mental health issues, post-traumatic stress disorder, alcohol or substance abuse disorders. That bill has actually gotten a lot of bipartisan support in both the House and Senate. It's headed to the House floor now after passing its only House committee, and that's one going into the session where I didn't think it probably had great odds of passing, and now it's only one step from going to the governor's desk. So always interesting which bills kind of pick up momentum as the session goes, and then others that kind of get a little bogged down as they move through the process.
Yeah, and I think it's of note that the voices in support or in opposition really play a crucial part in determining if people are going to get on board, like your story with all of these veterans who are experiencing PTSD, saying this is something that's really helped them, I think really swung Republicans in support of it. And we saw something kind of on the other side with some CYFD bills. I know you've been covering closely, Dan, about, cabinet secretaries showing up to oppose some changes to CYFD, swayed Republicans to vote for it. And we just saw the House concur on HB 5, was it?
Yeah, so this is a big CYFD bill that would set up a new outside oversight office, actually in the Attorney General's office, but it generated a lot of debate. It flew through the House and made it through its first Senate committee pretty quickly. The governor was not on board with the bill. She talked to some senators, got their ear, made, you know, kind of changed the whole dynamic of the bill. They then added some floor amendments. The governor said she's still not thrilled with certain parts of it, but it sounds like she's now, more okay with the bill. The House, as you mentioned, concurred yesterday, so it's going up to the governor's office, and looks like she'll probably sign it. We'll find out for sure. But interesting how these bills sometimes can be fast tracked, but then the governor still does have a lot of sway, even though she's entering her final, in her final 2 years in office, but still I think has the ability to talk to legislators, and I think also a little concern about if bills are vetoed, what could that mean as far as other bills maybe kind of getting caught in the crossfire and things like that. So at the end of the day, it looks like on that CYFD bill that they were able to make some compromises and kind of reach some common ground.
Yeah, and another bill sitting on the governor's desk that we've both covered a little bit is this overhaul to the Department of Game and Fish. It would change kind of the structure of the department, how members are appointed. It would require the governor to choose from a list of nominees instead of directly appointing them. It would raise a lot of licensing fees for hunting purposes. It would do a lot of things, and we're not quite sure, right, if the governor is going to veto that one or let it get through. She's only got a few days to decide since it reached her desk a little earlier this session.
Yeah, and we did confirm that the governor does have it. So interestingly, under the Constitution, any bills that get to her desk before Wednesday at noon, she only has 3 days to either sign or veto them. All other bills that reach her desk in the final 3 days of the session, she'll have 20 days after the session to act on them. So there is a little bit of with a bill like this, it'll be interesting to see she has a little bit more of a quicker deadline to act on that, and whereas some of the other bills she can take a little more time. So we'll probably find out for sure in the next day or two about that bill, and then see how legislators respond for it. But Megan mentioned the budget bill we're still waiting for, kind of late in the game, but Senate Finance still kind of holding on to that bill. There is a tax package as well that came out of a House committee kind of late last week, and I believe the House passed that on Saturday. And I think today the Senate committee is supposed to kind of give that bill its first hearing, and it'll be interesting to see if they make any changes to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting bill. It would essentially eliminate personal income taxes for working families, some working families making $70,000 annually or less. And it depends. There's a whole breakdown about it. Depends how many kids you have, and it depends if you're filing jointly or not. And there's some pretty helpful charts online about it. But it's like a pretty major tax break that some families could see, and that would be offset by a new surtax on oil. And this, of course, brought up a lot of controversy from Republicans saying, why do we need to tax oil more when we have such a record-breaking budget? A lot of points as well about the drop in the price of oil barrels since the start of the session. We've seen like $7 or $8 drop since the start of the session, which is pretty significant. But Democrats have pointed out that our legislative analysts did anticipate this was going to happen. It's not totally unexpected. So yeah, it'll come up in a Senate committee today, and we can probably expect to see some changes there. And it's something, some of these Senate changes to House bills have been stirring up some discontent among the two chambers, where the House, doesn't really agree with the Senate changes, but at the end of the day, it'll, if they change a bill, it gets sent back to the House, and the House has to decide if they want to agree with those changes or not.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a dynamic going on with the budget too. And there is some strategy the Senate holding on to this bill until late in the game. So then it's having a little bit of leverage with the House basically in a position, well, either you have to accept these changes or else we kind of too late in the game to start over on the budget. So most likely, with most legislators ready to get back home on Saturday and sleep for a few days, there's those kind of strategies do come in play. Wanted to mention we've also been, us and some of our colleagues have been reporting on some healthcare bills as well. That is one issue where there's a lot of different proposals, and a lot of them are still up in the air. There was a medical malpractice bill that's gotten a lot of attention. It stalled on Friday night, I believe, in its first Senate committee. We weren't really expecting it probably to go too far this year, but certainly a debate that we haven't seen the last of that. There's also some bills dealing with interstate compacts for healthcare workers that we did a story on yesterday, and kind of making it easier for out-of-state licensed, whether they're doctors or social workers or all these different kind of healthcare fields, and make it easier for them to practice in New Mexico, even if they were licensed out of state.
Yeah, and it's an interesting sort of healthcare package and a bunch of different strategies that we're seeing come up at the Roundhouse, like these compact bills. Advocates have described this as sort of the short-term solution to addressing the doctor shortage crisis in New Mexico, and medical malpractice as the long-term solution. And there are a few other bills like nursing to staffing ratios, this package called patient safety over profit as well that are getting through. And we're seeing some advocates saying, this is let's address the staffing and not change medical malpractice. And others are saying this isn't all of the above. We need all of these solutions to address it. But the doctor shortage, it certainly isn't unique to New Mexico, but in such a rural state with an aging population, it does affect our residents quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think there's agreement on the issue of the healthcare worker shortage, but like Megan said, a disagreement about how to kind of go about addressing that and really what's causing it, what's at the root of that issue. Before we head out, I want to also mention there have been a lot of talk, and our colleagues have done a lot of coverage of Western New Mexico University, which the president stepped down, got a big golden parachute to leave kind of at the end of last year. The governor had asked for the resignation of all but one of the regents there. The student regent was the only one for 2 months. Late last week, she did appoint 4 new regents, including former state senator Steve Neville. They've all been now confirmed by the Senate, these 4 new regents, one of them on Friday, and then I believe 3 others yesterday. So Western New Mexico has a new board of regents. I think they still have a temporary president, but at least I know some legislators have been concerned about that situation and not really having a lot of oversight. Certainly we'll be following up there, but it seemed like they were able to kind of beat the deadline of, getting that done before the session ends on Saturday.
Yeah, and one more sort of package of bills to mention before the session ends is immigration protective bills. We had a news conference yesterday from some immigrant advocacy groups like ACLU New Mexico and the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, and they had brought up some raids that ICE conducted in New Mexico last week in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Roswell. They arrested 48 undocumented immigrants, and these advocates said, we still don't know where they are. We don't know who they took. And they use this as a sort of platform to say, we need to pass some priority bills related to immigration in New Mexico. And I know we've talked about it before a little bit, but one of them would essentially shut down the ICE detainment centers for civil purposes in New Mexico. And another would would bar the state from using its own resources to pursue federal immigration arrests and detainment and things like that. So they are still hopeful that there's time. There's 4 days. The clock is ticking. But like you said, we're getting phone calls about these bills are stalled up, and we wanna see some progress on them. There's not a lot of time left, and it's grind time.
Yeah, it's definitely grind time at the Roundhouse. The end is in sight, for better or worse, depending on your point of view. I know we're looking forward to getting some rest, but I think we'll also miss it. It's been a really interesting session to cover. Before we go, I wanted to ask you, Megan. I know I had on social media the other day pointed out some of my favorite catchphrases for the session. We hear a lot of, kick the can down the road is an old classic. This is a simple bill is always a sign that it's not a simple bill. One of my favorites this year was guardrails, that we've heard that a lot on different bills, and what kind of guardrails are on that, which always kind of makes me think of bills cruising down the highway, bouncing off the. But I wanted to know if you had any favorite catchphrases from this 60-day session.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I've definitely heard common sense legislation way too many times this session, which can mean so many things and often means that this is going to be a long debate. I think another phrase we keep hearing is this bill vetted? And, has it gone through the interim, and have we heard it before? But yeah, guardrails, safeguards, that has come up a lot.
Well, it's funny how some of these kind of fall in and out of favor. I remember a few years ago, laser focused was the big catchphrase, and now we haven't heard that one as much recently. So maybe some of the different personalities, but we really appreciate everyone listening in. We'll try to be back at least with one more episode before the session ends at noon on Saturday. And until then, you can follow our coverage, abqjournal.com, and in the newspaper, social media as well. So 4 days to go.
4 days to go. You can find these episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But we'll be back soon with some more updates.
Thanks for listening.